What is going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a good weekend. BobbyFi here with my man, Eric Sheets-Haber, as usual. We are going to be doing the NBA first look. I'm not going to call it a breakdown. I don't think as much anymore because it really does change so much throughout the day. But I've been on a nice little NBA streak. It feels like every time I'm like, I should just stop doing this. There's just too many craziness thing going on. It's driving me nuts. I'm losing half, guys I'm 50% owned and scratch late and all these things. But then every time I start complaining about it, it sort of turns back in my direction a little bit. So on a little bit of a good one, I had some shots in golf, didn't end up making money, but I actually felt good that I, at least had some shots, even though a lot of my guys missed, and ready to get on to another week of NBA. Sheets, how was your weekend? And tell us about, how was the restaurant?
It was great. It was great. We went in, it was part outside, part inside. We didn't go inside yet, but we'll do that when we're fully. I tell you guys know I got my last dose of the vaccine like last week, and I'll give you I don't know if I give this full trip report or whatever it is, but remember, like, everybody's different, right? Your shot might be different, your age might be different, your underlyings might be different. But after I had the Pfizer vaccine, and the first day I took it was 3 weeks before, literally no side effects except for obviously my arm hurt, right? Mm-hmm. And then the second vaccine, I was preparing for a lot of side effects because there are a lot of people that had big flu-like symptoms, a lot of people, whatever. And my wife went literally the day before me. I was like a dealer. I had position on her. Like, I was able to see what she did like the day before, right? So she actually had nothing. She had like a little headache. And so I didn't have like flu-like symptoms afterwards. But I'm telling you, for the next 2 days, I was really out of sorts. It like really knocked me out. But it's funny, but it's not like you're actually sick. It's just like a reaction to the thing is going away. And then after that, I was like totally fine. I'm actually going away in a couple of weeks, and that'll be fun. My first time away since Singapore last year. Yeah, and so I'm looking forward to that. And looking forward to being a human again. Right. DFS wise was, again, I kind of like wrote off golf after day one, which was fine. And then NBA had a couple of shots. I made money in the NBA. I made money in hockey. I lost money in NASCAR, and I lost money in MMA. Overall, I think I lost a little bit over the weekend, but it was good. I'm doing a lot of work on other stuff. Just so you guys know, yes, it is happening. I'm going to be doing a video with somebody. Probably one of the best in the business. It's going to be recorded at Thursday night at like midnight. Wednesday at midnight. I'm going to put it up on the thing. I'm going to have someone, the Saberson guy actually is going to give me a half hour on how to play League of Legends DFS GPPs.
Oh, so, my goodness, here it goes.
We're putting it up on the site. It won't be like, I don't expect anybody to watch it in time to actually play, but just something up there in case people want to play. He's literally probably one of the best at it. So I figured I'd have him come on and just explain how to do it. That was it.
That's awesome. No, I mean, look, and also just, I guess we'll do this right before we get into the slate tonight. We will also be doing an Ncaa tournament breakdown with another friend of ours who's a little more informed than I am. I used to be Mr. College basketball expert like 8 years ago. I was literally like the captain of those things. I was study everything. I'd always win the pools, but I haven't been really informed as much lately. I haven't been paying as much attention. So we'll have a guy who does know a little bit more than we do. And
because he's younger, he has more time.
Exactly. And these guys, I remember being obsessed when I was his age too. So Having said all that, let's get to this slate. Sheets got his thing pulled up, and we're going to go.
No lineups made, so we're in good shape.
Good. Okay. As long as we don't put a full one, we should be in good shape. I had I wrote them again because I did talk to my host, and we're trying to work things out just to get very specifically what we're allowed to do. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's start off with the first game. What are your it's an interesting slate because I feel like it's not like there's these obvious things yet. I don't think there's anybody who stands out as, I think the people who, like you would say, you have to play in cash right now are people who might not even show up later for tournaments, with the exception of guys like Giannis. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of good spend ups, a lot of good ways to go. So we're going to have to think about lineup construction a lot today. What are your thoughts on the Sacramento side? And then jump over to Charlotte if you want to.
It froze on me, actually.
Oh, sorry. I've had a little bit of hiccups. We've been in the middle of a bad storm over here. Even when I'm wired in, it's going to be tough.
Well, the first thing I will say is that these two first games, it does rate to have a lot of real points. Mm-hmm. If that means anything to you. I mean, I think that these first two games, I mean, I don't even know what the over-unders are, but I would imagine they're both hovering around the 240 zone. Mm-hmm. And compared to the other four games, which are just kind of slogging a little bit. So that is interesting. But from a fantasy perspective, yes, there'd be a lot of fantasy points, but from what is considered good values maybe might not come from these games. But so I presume that all these Charlotte guys are back, right? So the Charlotte guys being back, even without even looking at projections per se, you can just kind of see. That's funny. I have my projections off to the right, and I have my just eyes off to the left here. And the first thing I would notice is eyeballing these. The top of the food chain here looks pretty healthy priced. And then the first place I would go are these three dudes in the 4Ks, right? Either Zeller, Graham, or Bridges. Like those would be my natural instinct is to kind of go there. And then when I look at the actual projections, it doesn't look like anybody is rating to be such a great play. So is it possible that we're going to be fading this game in some way? That'd be kind of sick if you thought about it. But as far as just overall values go, I don't really get too much from the Charlotte side. And as weird as it is, I mean, to give you an example, like the first value I have is Zeller, right? And even him projects like less than 5x. It's not like he's projects to be so great either. So, and similarly on Sacramento, I mean, like I'm looking at Rashad Holmes as maybe being, best value. So I guess De'Aaron Fox would be the way I would go. So De'Aaron Fox and Holmes would be my two best plays from this whole game. That's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I know. That's what I've got as well.
Okay.
I really like Fox. I think that Halliburton being back in a limited role, yes, that's helping Fox and everything, but just the shot attempts alone are enough of a reason to take a shot on him. He's actually it's not like he's been shooting the ball insanely well or anything like that, and he's put up 51, 56, and 64 his last 3 games, and you get another good matchup against a fast-paced team. He also tends to seem to take it personally against these other point guards where he tends to shoot the ball a lot more. If you look at those matchups, Portland, Atlanta, things like that, he always tends to shoot the ball a little bit more. So I love Fox. I think he's got a massive ceiling, plenty of good for the price. It's going to be tricky because I would say that one thing we should talk about is DraftKings. All of the stars are underpriced every night. They're 11K. They should probably be 12K. You got guys averaging 60 at 11K. That doesn't really match up with the way that it goes with the rest of the players' prices. So in a funny way, the best values are often going to be a lot of these top guys. De'Aaron Fox is in the next level of price, obviously, but I think has a similar upside to those guys. And even if he doesn't get all the way there and gets 50, that's plenty. And it does, we'll see where the ownership ends up, but I'm guessing people are going to flock to Giannis, which makes sense, to some of these other great spots. So personally, I'm into the Fox and Holmes thing. I'm having trouble getting to anyone else. If we had no Halliburton, I would take another shot on Beal because I actually think this matchup works really well for him. I think you could definitely get some, one of those games where he gets hot from 3 because the pace of play would really, really benefit him. And then on the other side, I do like Gordon Hayward. Everybody else is like a 10%er for me if I was like max entering, which I'm not really doing much of, but I do like Hayward as better than that. And I know he hasn't been great lately. It's hard to ignore these matchups against Sacramento for me. And, even the last game that he played, like Hayward, he only took 7 shots and that game was sort of a blowout. So he didn't play his normal run of minutes. He only played 26 minutes, but he still put up 30 fantasy points on 7 shots. He does enough other things. You know what I mean? He can get the assists, the rebounds. It's a good pace game. It's Sacramento. And if he gets hot, you could be looking at a sneaky little 50 spot. So I sort of like that combination from this game.
All right, you want to move on?
Yeah, sure. I'll start off if you want on the Milwaukee.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. So this game did really well for me on Saturday. This is the reason why I was able to hang in there. The value didn't hit for me, which is what most people played. And even though Giannis and Westbrook were 20% owned combined, I don't think they were owned that much. And that got me off to a huge thing. And then of course I played Hachimura at no ownership who put up 52. So that kind of made it easy. I think tonight you go right back to Giannis again. It's just, you got to treat Giannis like he's a center here. He played a lot of center in that last game, by the way. He played alongside Portis, but he was sort of the center. And even then, they didn't have Portis or Lopez in for some of the minutes. I just think he's gonna destroy this team. And pretty much we could worry about blowouts. We just saw them play it close with Beal out. I'm not gonna pretend that this game can't blow out, but I don't think that it's. I don't see that. That's not what I'm planning for. So I like Giannis a lot, but he's going to be really, really popular. I do think Portis makes sense again. The price is a little bit higher, but this is the kind of team. Not to mention, anytime Portis plays is the team that he already played for. I swear he always goes off, or at least puts up a good number. He put up 29 the other night at 4,100. Another night like that wouldn't surprise me. And if they do blow him out, I think he could explode. So I don't think I'd play Giannis and Portis too much together in this, but I do think I would play some Portis if I'm not playing Giannis. And then I actually like Middleton a lot. I think he's a better play on FanDuel, but I think this is the kind of matchup where, you can look at even the other night on Saturday, he shot 3 of 12 and he put up 39 fantasy points. My guess is he'll shoot better than 3 of 12 this time around. He had 8 assists, huge assist upside against this team. And the real play who I love, and I don't think I'm going to get to him on DraftKings, but I think you want to play Drew Holiday on FanDuel in most of your lineups. That's my take on the Milwaukee side. Anything that you want to drop in on that before I jump over to the Washington side?
Yeah, I like Drew Holiday a lot, actually. I didn't look at him on FanDuel yet, but I mean,
5,800.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it this way. I mean, he's getting the minute. He's slowly ramping up the minutes, and dude, he was 6 for freaking 18. I mean, you give me 18 shots.
Yep, seriously.
I mean, sounds good to me. So I do like him. And I think that Giannis is. I mean, to me, at least early, is the best spend on the slate. Better than LeBron, better than Jokic, better than Harden, better than Luka, better than Westbrook, better than Curry. He's for me the best spend on the slate. Like for now, I don't know where ownership is going to come in or anything like that, but it's not. Other guys in Milwaukee, again, yeah, I get the Portis thing. I always get the Portis thing. I don't think I would play Portis with any of the big starters from Milwaukee. So I like Drew. I guess, yeah, if he's 5,800 on FanDuel, that's going to be maybe the second best value there. And then Giannis, and yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that this game is going to be interesting to see what people do, because I think Westbrook, I mean, he's turned it up another level. Unfortunately, this is like the worst supporting cast in the NBA on Washington's side, but aside from Westbrook and Beal, obviously. But Westbrook has been terrific when Beal's played, when Beal hasn't played. And when they really feel threatened, he tends to get it going more than anybody. So this is a game where I feel like they'll feel threatened. 10-5, it's weird to pay the same price as Luka for Westbrook for me. On both sides, actually, they're the same price, I believe. With Beal back, of course, I'm struggling with it a little bit, to be honest with you, because I still like him in this matchup. It's nothing's any different. You know what I mean? You can attack this team down low. Bradley Beal, though, at 9,400 does offer some savings, and I don't think is going to be crazy high owned here. So sort of fits in my bet on the next guys thing, like Fox and Beal kind of a deal, like, you know what I mean, rather than paying all the way up. And I do think Beal has the upside, and we know that Milwaukee they'll give up a 3-point attempts. They actually, the percentage is good that they defended at, but that doesn't really matter. If Beal gets hot, he could just explode to this team in this kind of a matchup. So sort of going back and forth early in the day between Westbrook and Beal, and which I want. I have some of both of them listed, but they're both guys who are definitely high, on my radar. But there's just other good plays tonight that we have to consider also. This is a great game environment, but at the same time, they really need to hit for you to get there. And the one guy who is going to show up as value, and I actually support it, it's interesting to me that the other night that Robin Lopez against his brother didn't play that many minutes for the first time in a while after playing a bunch of minutes. I didn't understand exactly why until I started thinking about it a little bit more. The weird part is Lopez is actually their better defender, but he's sort of a better individual post defender. They don't have anything to stop Giannis, especially. So they need to play a bunch of minutes in order to try to clog up the lane a little bit. Otherwise, Giannis just has a free path to a dunk every single time. I mean, if they don't play these guys. So Alex Len played 33 minutes the other night. He didn't have a particularly great game, but he put up 22 fantasy points. I mean, if he's going to play anywhere near 30, and I know the projections have him less, I know it was second of a back-to-back, and that's partly why they limited Lopez, et cetera, et cetera. But just the fact that, like, if we're going to take shots, we were taking shots on Wagner when he starts. Like, Alex Len can put up a lot in a little bit of time, and if they're going to treat this like they need to have someone in the middle, I sort of lean Len over Lopez just because he can do more. But I do think each of them are kind of interesting on my initial value plays, and if Len happens to get that run again, I think you'll see him be much more productive this time around.
My favorite play on Washington by a decent amount is actually Alex Len. Again, you give me any minutes with a 3-handle in front of it with him against Milwaukee. You know how I feel about playing the big guys in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I like him a lot. And then the Westbrook versus Luka thing doesn't bother me too much. The only thing is that I think they're both going to be not that highly owned. If you want to know the truth, I think they'll both be 10, 15%, something like that. I think it's fine. I just I think both him and and Beal are fine. Let's put it this way: I'm not going to play them both together. I don't know what I'm going to do with either of them yet. Neither of them are like must plays for me at this particular point. But my best value play so far is in this game is Len and Giannis. Like, those are my two favorite plays.
Yeah, I get it. I'm with you. I think Giannis is, for very good reason, the chalk on this slate for the expend ups. But I really think that there's another route. We mentioned Holiday, but I do think this is the kind of matchup where I could see Middleton going out there and getting 50 plus as well. And maybe you do it more on FanDuel at 7,400 rather than 81. But I mean, he doesn't have, in my opinion, a whole lot of bus paths here without there being a blowout. Middleton.
You think he can still put up a ceiling with Drew back? I mean,
oh yeah, for sure. I don't think that really makes much of it. I mean, Drew is not a guy who tries to take over all the offense necessarily. You know what I mean? It's not like
I see 18 shots in his last game.
That's pretty rare though.
Okay.
And also that's against Washington, so everybody's going to shoot the ball more. And at the same time, I just mentioned Middleton had, he shot the ball 25% and he put up 39 in the same matchup. So he shoots the ball okay that game. He's at 50, just mediocre. Doesn't need to go crazy. And there's definitely upside for him on that as well. So I just think he's a really strong play that might get a little bit overlooked because everyone's playing Giannis.
Yeah. Okay, you want to move on?
Yeah, New York, Brooklyn. You want to start it off?
Yeah. So my two of my top 10 favorite value plays are both from this game. Are going to be Quickly and Burks from the Giants. From the Knicks side, with no Rose, I presume Peyton's out, or at least doubtful. And obviously a real up-paced matchup. I don't care who starts. If they start Frank Nicolina or whatever it is. You know what I mean. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna prefer to play the better players and the usage players, even if they're coming off the bench. I don't know, whatever. So I'm going to play Quickly and Burks are my two favorites. Somebody wants to try to talk me into Frank Nicolina, you can, but I think I've seen this movie before,
Sure.
With him starting and then maybe getting 14 minutes or something like that when the better players come in. So for me, it's going to be probably Quickly and Burks, and I have no problem playing both of those guys. And then I don't think I'm going to do the bigs on the Knicks side. As far as, like Noel or even Taj Gibson, I just feel as though these Brooklyn games just not going to go that way. If anything, Randall 9,800 is rough business, but he's going to have to. He's going to smash here, right? He's going to score 60, isn't he?
Good.
So for me,
they might get smoked too. That's always.
You think?
It's always in the realm of possibility with Brooklyn. They beat the hell out.
Oh, it's in the realm of possibility, but I don't know, man.
I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying it's another thing that adds into to maybe having him not getting to 60. Even though the Knicks have been good, they have been just massacred by a couple of these really good teams.
I'll tell you what, who also is good. How many of these guys can I play? But Barrett at 6,200 isn't bad either. So for me, it's all those guys. And then Brooklyn is, Durant's one of the top plays, and that's about the end of that. I didn't really look at I didn't really get to Irving at first look, but so for me it'd be like Harden and a bunch of Knicks.
Yeah, so okay, here's the thing that worries me about these Knicks guards, especially quickly, who's going to be so chalky.
Yep.
On FanDuel, it's harder to avoid him at 4,600, although there's actually other good players in that range. There is a huge bus path here for him. For one thing, you have a defensive-minded head coach, and you're really telling me that with James Harden and Kyrie Irving, you're going to put Alec Burks and Emmanuel quickly on them. I just don't see it. I think Ncaa will play minutes tonight. I think Austin Rivers will play minutes tonight. I just can't see how it's like forfeiting a game by doing that. There's absolutely zero way these guys can match up at all. And especially when you have two extremely good defenders, because Ncaa is an awesome defender still. And Austin Rivers is still a very good defender. Okay. When you have those guys on your team, I think you're going to see them play. I'm not saying play enough to play them in DFS. I'm saying that's how these guys bust on the Knicks side. At the same time, Quickly is, obviously makes sense as a play, but I will probably, no matter what he ends up, I'll probably be below the field on DraftKings just because I can see so many ways it doesn't work out right. And Alec Burks, I do think, is the guy I will end up siding a little bit more with because he can play a little bit more of the forward. They don't need him to guard those guys. And I think he could explode in this type of game environment. The minutes are going to be all over the place with him. You don't know what to expect. But he's going to shoot the ball. He's going to give himself a chance. I mean, his last game, he was 6 for 18 against OKC. And if we can get 18 shots out of Alec Burks tonight against this team, I think you're looking at 35 fantasy points or so. So I really like Alec Burks, but not a cash game guy for me. But I'm not playing cash, but I wouldn't suggest him. But I do like Burks here, and I just think it's important to keep it. Look, if not for Quickly being so popular, I wouldn't bring up that point about them guarding these guys, but I think that is a really, really big issue. They don't have anyone to match up with them. And the Knicks have been a really good defensive team. They do everything that makes DFS players hate the coach, and I commend them for it. They've done a great job. We'll get into San Antonio a little, in the next game, sort of a similar situation to me. They're playing to win basketball games, and they're going to put out the guys who can defend. That's my personal take. And along those same lines, I have a mild amount of interest in Taj Gibson at 3,100. The minutes have been getting pretty steady. I think 20 fantasy points it's a very good matchup for him to go out there and get 20 fantasy points. Not that you need size against this team, but I could see them playing a little bit more of an experienced guy. Noel also can get handsy and get in foul trouble. And his minutes haven't quite been the same the last couple games for multiple reasons. But I do think Taj being there is a solid play. Can't believe I said that out loud.
I was just looking at this kind of blind score for Ncaa is a little troubling. Now look at that.
What's that?
He played 6 minutes, and then didn't see the court.
I know. I'm not talking about playing Ncaa. I'm talking about why you can fade. Why the argument for fading Quickly, especially.
All right.
And then on the other side, if you're going to play Quickly and Burks or some combination of Knicks or Randall on FanDuel, maybe, I think that look, James Harden is a great play every single night. If you're comparing him to Giannis, I think it's actually closer than people think it is tonight. I really do. I know the matchup sucks, but you could look at it. I mean, pretty much every game, like he can shoot terribly and put up 60 fantasy points here. They run everything through him. The rebounding equity is high. Like everything is, he's just like a walking triple double. So I don't see him as being way behind Giannis. I do have Giannis as my preferred guy, but I definitely like Harden. And then anytime you got to get, and this is how I won. I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday that I almost won the money. I guess it was Thursday, but anytime you get Kyrie at real low ownership, it's always going to be interesting to me just because, it really could be either of these guys or both of them. But that's pretty much it. The one guy who I'm interested in, who I don't think other people are going to play at all on the other side is on FanDuel. I don't mind DeAndre Jordan, but I actually like Jeff Green a little bit here. And I think he's going to end up, I think those 20, 25, 26, whatever you see at the industry, they could turn into 30 minutes really easily in this matchup because of the Knicks' propensity to play big and Green being switchable and able to guard all of the positions. So he's cheap he's minimum, I believe, or 3,600 on FanDuel. He's 4K on DraftKings. So Jeff Green is another one. We're starving for value a little bit right now. So these guys are more on my radar. But when we're not starving for value, maybe it'll be different. That's just where I am right now.
So this is what makes DFS kind of fun, challenging, frustrating, and all of it, So San Antonio, Detroit, I have.
Do you have anybody from Brooklyn?
Yeah, James Harden.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just him, and I was gonna. And you mentioned Kyrie. If low owned is always in play, but nobody. I wasn't gonna go to Jordan. I wasn't gonna go to anybody else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what's frustrating? Not frustrating. It's kind of cool in a way about Detroit. About this Detroit San Antonio. I can't imagine like a worse basketball game like on the face of the earth. You know what I mean? Like, and then not only that, but you have a case where San Antonio. You have a coach who's just one of the least DFS friendly coaches there is with respect to predictability and all that stuff. And so with all this as background, I have, of the top 10, 12 values, like 100 of them come from this game, so we definitely want to talk about it. Like right now, my top overall value play is Rodney Magruder for whatever that is, So Rodney Magruder. Then my next top play right now is Kelvin Johnson from that same game, and then Delon Wright, and then Derek White, and Jeremy Grant, and Plumlee. All these guys are like, I consider like point per value, like top 10-ish plays, and that type of projections are on everything. But that's when especially when you get a whole bunch from the same game, that's kind of tough to ignore, So I find it troubling that this game sucks, right? As a game, but I'm probably going to have to end up with at least some of it, if not all of it, in my lineups, right? And again, I can't fill out full lineups and stuff like that. Like, for example, like you put a bunch of these guys in and then play whoever else you want in other spots. I mean, I just find it like intuitively and like hard to believe that this game goes off. You know what I mean? So like on an individual basis, these guys all look like decent plays, but then on the other hand, like how exactly do they all get there? So that's my initial thoughts of the guys that I just mentioned. And I was just hoping you'd give me some more insight into this.
Yeah, I'll just remind you that every single night this has been the case with San Antonio, and not once has it paid off to play these guys.
Right.
So just don't buy into all of this. Like if you play them, play one of them. You know what I mean? They are dividing up the minutes. These guys are not. Look, Derek White got their last game because he played well, not because he got extra minutes. He played 25 minutes, and he had. Basically, it was attributed. His 41 was attributed to 4 steals and 4 blocks and 2 steals.
Right.
Not that he couldn't have a good game against Detroit, but he played 25 minutes, and I know it's a second of a back-to-back, so you could always get popped. You could always get somebody out. All of these guys, I would just say, I mean, it's funny because the projections have sort of come around on this. They don't love him either.
Okay.
On the side, I mean, Keldon Johnson is the one who stands out, but like. I'll just remind you right now, Keldon Johnson, since he's come back from the injury, has scored no more than 18 fantasy points in a game.
Yeah.
He played more than 24 minutes, and yet we've got him projected for 30 minutes and 30 fantasy points.
Right.
That seems wrong to me.
Right.
Not that he can't. Look, of course, it could happen. So nobody's like, you don't have to at me and say, oh, look at Keldon Johnson got there. I like Keldon Johnson. They are playing to win basketball games in San Antonio. They have a lot of similarly talented players. The only one who's sort of stands out normally would be Murray, who we like without DeRozan. But the truth is, with Derek White there, Murray's production has just been like, I don't want to say non-existent, but he's like a totally different person when Derek White's on the court. So I as of right now, I do have Keldon Johnson and Derek White in some of I have some interest in them, but I'm waiting to see. I don't know how good I feel about any of it. Devin Vassell coming off of the injury would be interesting to me, not the injury, the COVID. But they've really and part of what Pop's doing is acknowledging that COVID has had a serious effect on some players. So he's not going to play them tons of minutes. And that's just what's happening. They have enough bodies. It's not like they're down, they have 11 guys dressing, right? Like, it's not like they're down to no bodies just because they don't have Aldridge and DeRozan. And the production can get spread out. Lonnie Walker can be high usage. Vassell for his 15 minutes might have high usage. You know what I mean? It's hard to know. I'd love to see the starting lineup. I have a sneaky suspicion that we might start seeing more of Drew Eubanks, and that's the guy who, like, look, it doesn't look like a great projection for him, but I will just remind people that he can put up fantasy points for one thing. He just played it in the game against Philly. He put up 37 in 23 minutes. He put up 20 the game before that in 19 minutes. It's a back-to-back. I think he makes a little bit of sense here. So whether it's he who starts or Trey Lyles, both of them have mild interest to me. But this is the ultimate example of a team. I've got a bunch of guys written in at 15% to start the day because they all make sense like if you talk about them. But when you think about how they've been running things over there, it's been really hard to get a number of them right at the same time. And actually Detroit is not entirely, they're not dissimilar, but like it's not like a bunch of these guys go off very often. I do like DeLon Wright. He would be the one I would side with. I don't think he needs to do a whole lot of extra stuff. He's with the ball in his hand at 5,600. I think the minutes are back now for him. Rodney Magruder, they're giving the minutes to, and as long as he shoots well, again, another guy who's shooting reliant, maybe a better version of Svi is what I would call him. When Svi was in that spot, but I do like.
It's important to remember, by the way, to tell people why this is all happening, right? Because people see that, oh my God, Magruder played 10 minutes, and all of a sudden, like the next game he played 20 minutes. Remember, since then, Svi is left. They traded Svi. DSJ is out, right? So that's why he got those minutes, and that's why he's projecting to get these many minutes. It's not like
right. And he got the minutes before because we had no DeLon Wright.
Right.
So we actually don't entirely know for sure, but we do know that he did play the minutes the last time out with these guys gone. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of risk, but they're in 3,400. What else are you going to say? Jeremy Grant also stands out as being like a solid play. I actually don't think the pace of this game will be as slow as you think. Like Detroit plays slow, but they also play terrible defensively. San Antonio plays pretty poor defensively, and they play fast. So I'm kind of, right now I have Jeremy Grant behind Gordon Hayward, but I could easily see switching that. I don't think they're very far apart. And the one guy who's starting to play more and more, and I think they should just give all the minutes to, and maybe they will at some point soon. He's playing really, really well as Isaiah Stewart. Not loving the 4,100 price increase, but he should be on your board as a value play if you're playing a bunch of lineups. And unless we hear about other things, obviously.
You know what I think we're gonna do as a feature, either on this show or like a later thing or something to put up on the site or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I want to do a thing of like good chalk and bad chalk. We rank like the guys who are gonna be the highest owned guys, and just give our opinions on whether it's good chalk or bad chalk. And a lot of it's gonna come down to like instinct or whatever it is. But like, for example, I happen to really dislike the Magruder play. If he ends up to be really,
you said he was your top value guy. You mean
no?
Was that Sheets? You there?
I'm just saying what the ranking is per points per. I'm just telling what the downside is from that. You know what I mean? Like this is the median. This is a median projection. So sometimes you're gonna get, sometimes he isn't. But what the median projection is based on is certain things that may or may not happen, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't like him as chalk, and part of it is just you and I talking through this a little bit, like about why, like number one, why he got the minutes, where the fantasy points came from, like the fact that DeLon Wright is actually back. I mean, I think that's a big deal for openers. Like, and that was one of the games he got the minutes. The second of all, you know what I don't like? I don't like what you said. I like that you said it, that he's like so shooting reliant. Like this 7 rebound game. That's what I was doing. I was scrolling back and seeing if that was more of what he's supposed to do, or if it's more of an outlier. And this guy doesn't get any rebounds at all.
No, he's not.
So if he ends up being like the chalk du jour that people just kind of flock to between him and, well, quickly 5,600 is a little different. But if it's like a 3,400 guy that people just they have to play or whatever, and he ends up 50% on, I'm of the belief that a guy like this is probably bad chalk. Like I would rather take a shot and go for like Alec Burks or something like that at 4,400 than maybe him at 3,400. That's just my instinct.
I totally agree with it. Regardless of what happens tonight, that's the way I think in DFS. I agree 100%. Anytime you can find a way to get to not play this guy, if he's going to be that kind of chalk, would be the way to go. That kind of shooting, and we saw it with Svi. Svi was a great example. You know what I mean? And he got crushed. He crushed my lineups the second night because I actually had him in some because, I mean, look, he was like 88% owned or something ridiculous. And he had like 9 fantasy points. You know what I mean? So that is completely well within the Magruder spectrum. Also, I want to add one more thing. Jeremy Grant was out those other 2 games also. So it was Jeremy Grant and
that's a big deal.
Yeah, and on top of it, he made 4 out of 6 threes in the game where he really went off. The only game that he really went off, he had a nice game the last time out against Brooklyn. You mentioned the rebounds, but he also had 3 steals in that game too. There's a lot of things you don't, and as San Antonio goes, they don't tend to turn the ball over as much. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of reasons why you could avoid those guys and make different arguments. There's one other guy I do want to mention on this. Well, 2 other guys who are, Detroit does weird things, but Josh Jackson always has a ceiling, and Sadiq Bey will get minutes and can always get hot. I just want to mention them. I don't know what you want to do with that. They also fall in my early 10 percenters list.
Okay.
10-ish percenters. You want to talk about, I could start off with the Clippers in Dallas.
Yeah, go for it.
So we don't usually see these guys on back-to-backs. My guess is after they just got hammered last night by New Orleans that we're going to see them both play. I know the line, people were questioning it earlier. Seems about right to me at 1.5 on the road at Dallas. So I don't think that there's anything to worry about too much there. I love both of them. I think that I would side with, again, it would be Kawhi on DraftKings PG on FanDuel, but when we talk about shooting guards on FanDuel, you'll see why it's hard to get the PG play in there. It's hard to make as much sense. This is assuming, of course, that everybody plays and that we have that information. It still wouldn't shock me if somebody sat, but after getting torched like that, Tyronn Lue doesn't exactly have the same demeanor as Doc Rivers in that way. He's a little more competitive and will throw his guys right back out there for a bunch of minutes. So I think they're both really interesting. Dallas is lousy defensively. This game actually has a decent total. And we saw this matchup in the playoffs, and we saw both of these guys. It was like they were taking turns putting up 60 fantasy points each game. I'm not saying they're going to get that, but I do think that it's there. I want to add that people make a mistake. So we had when we got, what's his name out the other day, Beverly, and I heard it on a number of shows, and it was reflected in the ownership. When Beverly's out, it is absolutely not a boost to Kawhi and Paul George. I like the matchup for them. That's why I like them tonight. I like the price tag. That's why I like them tonight. It's the exact opposite of a boost, because the guys you're playing with instead is going to be Lou Williams, or if you get lucky, it's Terrence Mann, or sorry, Lou Williams or Reggie Jackson. Versus, wouldn't your production be so much better if Patrick Beverly was on the court than guys who hold the ball as much as Lou Williams or Reggie Jackson? That's the way it should be looked at. So this is not a bump up because of that. But the part that might be a bump up that we have to pay attention to is I'm worried about Ibaka playing in a very real way tonight, which is going to make Marcus Morris become an awesome play, probably very chalky play, but that's going to be that's the guy I think you'd naturally go to. And then you can always get some Zubac too, but it's not like you need to play big against Dallas. So they will play a lot of minutes with Morris at the 5, assuming that Ibaka's out.
Okay.
That's my thoughts on those guys. Do you have anything with the Clippers?
Yeah, I just not, for me, it was nothing fancy. It was just I have Paul George and Kawhi, at least on DraftKings, equal. So I don't really know much, and I actually have them very similar on FanDuel too, except for there's positional issues over at FanDuel, which I guess we'll talk about a little later. But and then on the Dallas side, it was nothing fancy for me. I kind of like to play Luka, tough matchup, whatever it is. He's Luka.
It's actually now I would call it actually a pretty easy matchup.
Okay, whatever it is, however, whether people call it a good one or a bad one, I'm still going to play him. So he looks good. I think where do I like him more? I don't know.
I have a whole counter Luka on FanDuel argument.
All right, go for it.
So he's going to stand out with that 10.2 price, which is going to make him really popular. I want to point out in his last 5 games, I believe, he has 0 steals and 0 blocks, and also hasn't topped in terms of FanDuel points. I think he's topped 50 one time. He had a triple-double and didn't reach 50.
How's that even possible?
That's the problem. Well, that's how you do it. On FanDuel, it's all about the steal block upside is so huge. You need guys to get some. Not to mention that the Clippers aren't especially sloppy. So that's a big part of why Luka is so cheap over there, because he consistently underperforms on FanDuel for his price. I prefer him on DraftKings, where I get the double-double, triple-double bonus, etc., and the 3-point bonus. And also he turns the ball over a lot. I don't lose the turnovers, and I don't need the steals and blocks. So I would side with him heavily more on DraftKings than I will on FanDuel. Of course, now that I said that, he's going to have like 7 steals tonight and 3 blocks or something. But that's my argument for him versus Sites. And whereas I like Porzingis always better on FanDuel because he has the steal and block upside.
You know, it's funny. The more I'm looking at it, I mean, if you think that Luka is going to be really, really chalky over there on FanDuel, and I kind of like the Westbrook play over there.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a little worse, but I don't think you know what I mean? But who cares if he's a little worse?
I mean, he's been way better for a while on FanDuel, especially because, Westbrook, he doesn't get a ton of it, but I mean, he's getting a couple steals a game. That's going to happen.
He's also committing like 100 turnovers a game, right?
Well, he also turns the ball over a time, but so does Luka.
Whatever.
Luka does that too. You know, it's not like, I don't think they've been a whole lot different lately in terms. Let me see what Luka's turnovers have been lately.
Whatever. I mean,
yeah, it could not as much as Westbrook, obviously, but like this now they're pretty high. Yeah, and I didn't mean it's not. You're right. It actually may be a worse matchup for Luka depending on how the Clippers come out. If they say, okay, we're putting Paul George or Kawhi on you all the time, then it's a little worse. But at the same time, he torched this team in the playoffs. Like it didn't affect him in the playoffs. I don't expect it to affect him terribly tonight. They'll just keep running those high screens and get those. The Clippers will switch anyway, so they don't need to worry about it as much. And Beverly being off the court certainly doesn't help the Clippers defense.
Any ancillary pieces from Dallas or no?
Hardaway Jr. stands out a little bit, but it's just you're playing an upside guy who could take a bunch of shots. That's really what you're looking at. I'm a little disappointed in them as personally that little less run to Jalen Brunson than I would have thought in some of these games lately. But I do think he's going to play more minutes than he's being projected. So he's probably like somewhat in play, but I just don't think I'm going to do it. Hardaway, again, looks great on FanDuel. The problem is you've got other guys the exact same price as him over there that just stand out, and we'll get to that when it comes up. And Porzingis, I think, is always a guy you can get. Look, Luka's not a 10% guy tonight for me. He's higher than that on DraftKings especially. But Porzingis, if I don't like him in the matchup specifically, he's still going to be in 10% of my lineups on FanDuel at least, just because the block steal upside, the heat check upside, the fact that no one ever plays him, and the fact that he, has real 60+ upside. So that's my whole Luka thing, my whole Kristaps thing.
Okay. Indiana, Denver.
Yep.
So on, we'll do DraftKings first. We'll do FanDuel separately, but just I think it requires special.
Yeah.
That Karis LeVert's basically free over there. And I'm not fading that under any circumstances. On DraftKings though, Sabonis just feels as though, I mean, he rates to be okay, but nothing terrific. Wasn't really getting him much, if you want to know the truth, from either side of this game. Obviously Jokic is a good play, but aside from that, I'm not really getting all that much. I mean, you like Brogdon? I mean, like anybody over here?
I like Brogdon. I still feel like he's too cheap on both sides. I like him better on FanDuel, but I think he's still too cheap, and he's kind of proving it. Like in 2 really bad matchups, he just put up 48 and 40. They had the blowout loss that he was terrible in, that I'll just throw away. And then he put up 40 right before that against Cleveland. Again, and I think it was turned into a little bit of a blowout at the end, and then the blowout against Philly. So really the only times he hasn't been at the 40 range, at the 40 mark, has been those blowout situations. I think this game stays close. I know that some of those games didn't have LeVert, and LeVert will take away some usage, theoretically. I actually feel like, I mean, if you look, it actually checks out too. Brogdon's fantasy production was better when Oladipo was on this team. It was better last year when they had him too. Like, I mean, he's not, he's still down in prices. We haven't seen him in a while, but his production has been so much lower. Maybe you could argue that having another guy like a LeVert on the court might actually benefit him. Maybe I'm reaching, but either way, I think the price is still tempting enough to where I'm willing to engage with that. I'm not going to play LeVert over here, but obviously we're going to load up on him on FanDuel. So,
you like the Facundo at all, or the Campazzo?
It feels really fishy to me.
Me too.
But it's not like
I don't know. Morris is out. I don't know. I just figured
he's gonna. No, you're right. He's gonna play minute. I mean, I have him on my list. I have him as another guy who's just maybe a little above 10% right now, but I'm hoping to get better value. But yeah, I think that he's in play. My favorite play though in this game by far is Jokic. I think Jokic is I mentioned the other guys I like. I'm going to try and probably end up getting 2 in if the value opens up on DraftKings. But I think Jokic is possibly the second best play.
Could be.
Big men have absolutely torched Indiana, but yet they have this reputation because Miles Turner is still a good defender, but he's a help side defender. Jokic should be able to thrive in this matchup and has played just extremely well. If they win a few games in a row, he might be the favorite for MVP in just a few minutes, like literally, because we don't have Embiid. Well, we had Embiid, whatever. He had to miss a game. Now he's going to get hurt, so we don't know what's going to happen with that. And yeah, I'm pretty high on Jokic tonight, and it's going to be hard to get all these guys in, but I have Jokic and Jokic, Giannis, and Luka all sort of in similar things, which is why I may just take the other way and start playing the Beals and the Foxes, because the next tier down, you get similar, not upside, but you have guys who could put up the same number at a cheaper price, and I can get 3 of those guys in or something like that. But he's the one I have the most interest in. I do think Jamal Murray's in play, but I don't think I'm going to end up going there.
Memphis, Phoenix.
And Barton.
You like Barton?
I never usually do. The minutes are hard to ignore. His usage has been pretty good. The numbers have been good. I'm not going to just avoid him because he wasn't the right play before. He's been good, and he's going to get run without Gary Harris and Morris. It does really benefit him, I think, probably as much as anyone, except for like Campazzo and Dozier. So I'm into the Barton thing at 5.3. And I also think that, again, Murray and Porter are just slightly better plays than usual today, just because of the no Morris thing.
Memphis, Phoenix?
Yep.
So Chris Paul's particularly cheap on FanDuel. We'll get to that when we get to it.
Yep.
But seems okay enough on DraftKings, but nothing fantastic. Booker, likewise, okay enough, but nothing fantastic. Ayton, okay enough. You know what I mean? Like nothing, no real standout. And then on the Memphis side, again, Morant just kind of looks fine at 8K. And Valanciunas looks kind of fine at 7,600. I don't know what we're gonna do with Brandon Clark and all this stuff, but with that said, I mean, I've done worse stacking games and pairing just kind of okay looking guys like this with one another, So I've done worse doing stuff like really Morant and Valanciunas versus Booker or versus Chris Paul or something like that. Because maybe in and of themselves they don't look like screaming values, but one gets hot, the other can get hot, and I don't know. Maybe this could be a fun game. I don't know. Well, that's my initial look at it, actually.
Yeah, I sort of agree. I actually like this. Statistically, it's a bad matchup for Devin Booker because they guard the 2 well.
Okay.
The pace alone is enough of a reason for me to take a shot on Booker here. You also have guys that foul a lot. Booker can get to the line quite a bit.
Yeah.
I just think he's a good off the board play that sort of fits with that. Not all my builds are going to be the mid tier, but the ones that I'm avoiding the top guys, he sort of fits in nicely as the high upside 8K guy. Chris Paul, I think, is more in play on FanDuel. I don't have a ton of interest over here, but I think it's fine. You just need the game to stay close, and you need him to take over at the end in order for it to work. Ja hasn't been playing very well the last couple of games, but I'm still. It's not a great matchup against Paul or anything like that. I think he still probably finds a way to get there. So I mild interest, but I actually think that I'm a little more interested in Joe Val tonight.
Yeah, sure.
I think that there's some real upside for him, and Ayton has been much better this year defensively, but it's not necessarily enough. And Joe Val, you just look at it like, I mean, he in the games where they actually let him play the 30 minutes, he pretty much goes nuts. The only I'm going to forgive anybody against Denver because every big man doesn't do anything against Denver. But against this Phoenix team, I mean, it feels like it could be one of those, 20 and 15 kind of a game. It should be an important competitive game. He tends to play more minutes in those situations. So I just sort of like him here. And the pace, I actually like him better in slower paced games in this game. Even though Memphis plays fast, it'll be a little slower from his perspective. And then Brandon Clark is just your large field tournament flyer.
Huh. I'm looking ahead to this Lakers Golden State.
Yeah. What about the Phoenix side? Oh,
Oh,
sorry. We forgot one other guy. You didn't talk about Saric at all, did you?
No.
So I think Saric is an interesting value, sort of in the
Okay.
mold of the other guys. Like the minutes have actually been there for him. He's playing well. It's kind of frustrating. And without Cam Johnson, that's why his projection jumped up. The weird part is Abdul Nader like plays the same minutes that Cam Johnson was playing anyway, so it's a little tricky to figure out. Actually, Abdul Nader has been really consistently in the 20s for a guy who's 3,300, but I'm not going to probably get to that on this slate. I think that Saric is mildly interesting. I think Jay Crowder on FanDuel, which we'll get over to in a minute, at 3,900. Jay Crowder's minutes are going to fluctuate. This also probably wouldn't hurt to mention. This is his former team. That he should have nothing but love for these guys. They traded him to a good contender, you know what I mean? Or he ended up going on to a good contender, but he was a big part of their team for a while last year. So mild interest in Crowder on FanDuel, but not on DraftKings. Oh, and Bridges as well. I think so. Ranking him, I put Bridges actually behind Booker as my favorite, with Saric, and then the other guys behind them.
Okay.
All right, Lakers. What are you thinking here? Sheets.
Froze a little bit, but I'm gonna keep going.
My bad. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
The only guy that I looked at from the Lakers that I'm interested in was LeBron. He is, among a group of interesting spends, right, on DraftKings. Right, he's 10-3, Jokic is 10-7, Luka is 10-6. Westbrook is 10-5, and Curry also from this game is 10K. I actually, just call it what it is. I have him ranked very similarly to all of those guys I mentioned, with the exception of Giannis, who I think is just better. He's a little bit better. So I'm just got to keep an eye on ownership here. But if LeBron goes lower owned as a result, I certainly like him. It's really just going to depend on ownership. I certainly like him here. Golden State plays fast, and game stays close. LeBron can get up for a Curry game, I think. That'd be my my instinct. And on the other side of the game, you're going to have to tell me if this is one of those games where Draymond goes off. I have to scroll like 100 years down to find him in the projections, but he is only 6,500. Is this a game that he could score 60? I don't know. So Curry, he's always got that ceiling upside. I just like the other guys just a little bit better. But again, if he's going to be like 5% owned as a result of it, again, it's got that perfect price tag to be under owned, like right at 10K. So maybe he's in play for me. So that's pretty much it. Nobody. I wasn't going to get maybe a little Wiseman on FanDuel or whatever, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh man, he killed my lineup the other night. 0-0. The DNP CD. Yeah,
oh, really?
They just didn't play him. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I don't think. I think that like Wiseman is really like. Just want to make just one quick point about him, because I don't think that he at 5K can ever be in play these days. But he is cheap on FanDuel. The only problem is like they really are not trying to play him that many minutes right now. Like they're really barely using him. He was incredible against Utah the other night, and he put up 22 fantasy points. You know what I mean? It's I just don't think you can play him personally. The only game he really did anything was the game without Steph and Draymond. But I would like to entertain the LeBron goes after Steph Curry narrative kind of a thing and all that. I don't see LeBron as being close to the other guys in his range in general. And it always bothers me. I don't like how they price players. LeBron should not be priced. I mean, Luka averages 9 more fantasy points per game than LeBron, and there's just a $400 price difference. That makes no sense to me. So I know Anthony Davis is out, but even with Anthony Davis out, it's not like his numbers have increased that much. We rarely get the big LeBron games. This is a spot where when I first built my lineups, I was like, okay, let's go. He's playing against Steph, and he would have gone off completely in the last game when they were playing, but they were up by like 30 points, and he was gone after he only played 24 minutes. But if you look at it, I mean, some of it's blowout, some of it's other things, but just go through his game log and try to find me a game that you'd be happy with it. And then you find one like, okay, he put up 60 against Phoenix. which is still probably like not that great of a thing considering that's what Jokic averages. And he was 16 of 24 from that game. In that game, like that's a lot, to expect. His other big game was against Washington. He put up 62 fantasy points, 14 of 29 shots. The other big game before that, last time out was Minnesota. Awful defense. Golden State fits some of these categories, but all of these numbers, when I see the other guys with these kind of games, they're in the 70s. You know what I mean? And LeBron needs to do all of that to get to 60. Now he's going to have opportunity because he's going to have the ball in his hands and whatnot, but I don't know. Personally, I think the play of the day may be Kyle Kuzma on both sites. I have interest in him. I don't think this is a fluke what's happening right now. I think he's going to rebound the hell out of the ball as long as Marc Gasol is out, especially. I think they will play small ball with him and not use Harrell all the time at the 5, who's also not an exceptional rebounder. I am very into playing Kuzma tonight, and that's my favorite Laker as of this moment. I know it feels like thin maybe, but I don't think it is. I think he's a really, really strong play. And I don't mind Markeith Morris. I probably wouldn't play those two in the same lineup together, but there's a really good chance to me Damian Jones, may start this game and play like 5 minutes. Like, I don't think they have any reason to keep him on the court against this Warriors team. It is his old team, by the way. Can you still hear me, Sheets? I got a little bit of a hiccup there, but I think it's so good. Yeah. This is Damian Jones' former team. Maybe they let him get a little extra run against his buddies or something. I don't know. That's the only argument I can make for a minimum cost guy. But I really, really like Kuzma, and to a lesser extent I think that Schroeder's in play. And then I birthday narrative. It's a day late, but it was Steph Curry's birthday yesterday, which usually for most players in the NBA you might think hangover or something like that. Steph seems like a pretty good dude, doesn't he? He doesn't seem like he gets rowdy and ruckus too often. So like, I'm not worried about a hangover for him. I do like him a little bit on FanDuel at 9,400. Unlike Luka and some of the other guys we talked about, he actually does get some steals. And obviously can always shoot himself into the game. But 10K, we're not really getting that much savings from the guys who I feel like are an automatic 50 with 75 upside. Whereas Steph can go crazy and get you there, but he's certainly not an automatic 50 the same way the other guys are.
Before we go into FanDuel, because I want to get this in before FanDuel starts to wind down. When people get what they need, they'll watch, they won't watch the last couple of minutes or whatever it is. So I just want to put this out there. I usually would tweet about this, but it was over the weekend or whatever. And I just kind of forgot. So there is an RIP that I have to acknowledge from the sports world. And you guys know I've been kind of into MMA a little bit, just for whatever. I really don't even like the MMA sports. I grew up like kind of with boxing or whatever in my day. So I want to give an RIP to marvelous Marvin Hagler. Okay. So he passed away kind of with a little less fanfare than I would imagine over like, I think it was Friday or something like that. And, for me growing up, like that whole boxing thing with the middleweights and all the stuff between him and Leonard and all this guy, I mean, he was awesome. I mean, you could argue best ever or whoever it was, tough guy, misunderstood guy, never one of those guys that kind of like kowtowed to the media or whatever. Everybody kind of hated him sometimes, but he had probably some of like the best performances, in the history of boxing. And it actually is just coming out that he actually died out of complications from COVID, which makes it even worse. So definitely RIP to him. Definitely. You talk about my generation, like when I grew up with sports and stuff like that, he was literally right in the sweet spot. So RIP to him.
Yeah, that's it's really sad. I didn't even know that. I didn't get that news. That's really sad. Too bad.
All right, so FanDuel.
Yes.
So point guard, it's weird because so we talked about some good spend ups on point guard, which certainly makes sense, right? With Luka and play Westbrook over here, whatever. But if you want to play, for example, Giannis, and you want to like save money, like there are a couple of places you could do it, and one of them is kind of middling on at the point guard position. Like one guy I mentioned earlier is cheaper over here is Paul George at Chris Paul at 6,800. And then another guy that we mentioned earlier, well, two guys, but one in particular they mentioned earlier is really cheap over here is Drew Holiday. and playing him with Giannis might seem fishy, but it could be part of like a decent game stack if you want to do that. So I do like Drew Holiday and Chris Paul both is kind of middling over here. We mentioned DeLon Wright also, who fits in there, but for me, these would be my non, Luka / Westbrook plays over here.
Yeah, I have Luka and Westbrook rated about the same, but they're beneath those guys for me that you just mentioned. I have Holiday number 1, and Brogdon and Chris Paul I have as identical.
Okay.
Sort of like how I feel about Luka and Westbrook over here today, but I would give it a little edge to Luka, I think, but it's close between those two. I also still like De'Aaron Fox a ton. Get a little bit of a discount with him, but the real guy that we get a discount on that I mentioned over there for a minute is I think that Curry's discount is enough. I think him being $800 cheaper is enough of a reason to go to him over those other guys. In what's going to be a tough matchup, they're going to need every bit of him. So maybe we skip. Maybe I may end up skipping Luka and them all together and playing the lower owned and cheaper Steph Curry.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. All right, shooting guard.
So it's shooting guard. We have mentioned Karis LeVert earlier, and he obviously is a smash player over here. And we also mentioned Emmanuel Quigley, who over here is 4,600. And he's a really, really good play also. And I talked about like positional issues over here because these are not the only good plays. You know what I mean? Like James Harden is a good play, but he's totally different price tag. Paul George, who I alluded to earlier, he's a really, really good play, but it's just like a totally different way to go, Mm-hmm. So I will throw one other guy in. Well, first of all, if you want just a total like direct freaking pivot off of LeVert, you could play Alec Burks at 4,100, the exact same price, and you could fade Quigley in that build too. And that's then you could play chalk everywhere else, and that makes that work. But if you want to then like pivot off the pivot, like you want to pivot off of Paul George, for example, you want to squint and play Devin Booker at 7,500. He's going to get, just because there's so many better plays, he's going to get just low ownership over here. Let's put it that way. So that's another guy you can play also. Yeah,
I really like this position. So there's a lot of guys that it makes it kind of tricky. Point guard and shooting guard, I had that issue with today. LeVert's I don't know. Look, the only reason I might fade him in a lineup, like 1 out of 100, is that there's just other plays that I like too, but it really is hard to fade him. I think he's a much, much better play than Quigley is. I still like I like Quigley better over here, but I absolutely have no problem playing the LeVert Burks lineup together. I think that makes a lot of sense too, and you get away from the Quigley chalk. I also don't mind Paul George, Bradley Beal, who also you could use in that game stack if you played Holiday or Middleton. I mean, all that game is way more stackable over here. And I agree with you about Booker. I wrote him down. I just don't have him quite as high over here because the position is strong. That's really it. Even guys like DiVincenzo, who would normally stand out, I just don't think I'm going to end up getting to it. Tim Hardaway Jr., too cheap. Devontae Graham with some upside at 4,500. Like Patty Mills only at 4K. Magruder at minimum. There's a bunch of guys who you could consider, but I just think there's too many good options for us to consider any of those guys today.
Small forward on FanDuel, I'm just kind of drawn to LeBron over here for lack of better options. Where on DraftKings it's not as much of a priority. I'm finding small forward a little rough. Like, not to say rough. I mean, you certainly play Kawhi up there, but I'm looking at LeBron being kind of a very, very good spend up over here. With respect to values and things like that, in addition to, we talked about, RJ Barrett, you said was 5,700, right? He's probably really good. Mm-hmm. Middleton, like you said, 7,400 over here is all right if you like him. It's not my thing. But let's not forget Kelvin Johnson still exists, and he's 5K. But one more for you. And again, now it's coming from the same game again. So this is what they do to you: is you can play Michael Bridges at 5K.
Yeah.
So that's three guys from the Phoenix side of that game that I've just kind of talked about just by accident. So might be something to consider.
Yeah, I hear you there. I like Bridges as well. My highest owned small forward is going to be Chris Middleton.
Okay.
I actually think that in this matchup you can play him and Giannis together. Maybe not Holiday also, but if you're going to run Westbrook or Beal, I think maybe you even could. Another guy who I'm considering as maybe a pivot off of Bridges, certainly won't project as well, but I know Bradley Beal didn't play, but he did just put up 50 against this team, and that's Rui Hachimura.
Ooh, that's nice.
Nice to see him, like it'd be a nice way to differentiate your builds a little bit. But I agree that this is the better place to play LeBron, the better site. And I have it ranked for my overall guys in terms of my ownership will be Middleton number 1, LeBron number 2. And then I have RJ Barrett and Kelvin Johnson and Mikal Bridges in the same range, followed by Kawhi and Rui Hachimura.
A power forward Giannis is a tough fade for me. If you wanted, not say if you want to fade him, but maybe, again, this is not somebody you play alongside of him normally, but 4K on Portis is really just not a lot of money. I'll just say that. The next decision that you can make is, and so Randall at 9,200 and Sabonis at 9,100 are both pretty affordable. Then the guys who just refuses to price up because, hey, look, he hasn't been as good as he was at the beginning of the year, but Jeremy Grant at 7,300. I mean, he's gonna get owned, right? I mean, 7,300 is really, really cheap for him. So I gotta watch ownership for him, but nothing particularly beyond that for me.
Yeah, I like Portis and Giannis. I mean, a lot of guys in the same game. Like it's Washington, so there's a reason I'm targeting him. Right back, Kyle Kuzma.
Oh yeah.
Over here. Julius Randle. Jeff Green is minimum cost, 3,500. I actually like him tonight. And then I don't mind getting some pieces of the cheap Saric. I tend to look to pay down a little bit more at power forward if I'm not going to be playing Giannis. And then you've got Jay Crowder at 3,900 near minimum cost with I think a lot of upside. So I actually think I might lean that way. It's a great tournament play, Jay Crowder here. I think that the minutes certainly could go in his favor. And then I hear the Grant play. I think I would rather pay down and play PJ Washington than play Grant personally, but they're close to me. And then I don't even like saying this out loud. Well, first of all, Kristaps, I don't mind saying that one because I always like Kristaps a little bit over here, but I do think Markeith Morris is in play. The Lakers, I mean, it doesn't have to be, even though it has been him going off, it's been, what's his name going off, Kuzma. These games, you could get 30 minutes out of Morris if the game plays out right, and he could easily, I mean, he's put up over 20 in 4 straight games. He had 28 in a game. He played 33 minutes in one of those games against Phoenix, his old team, by the way. Not a coincidence to me. But anyway, I think all those guys are in play, but the main ones you want to focus on for me are actually going to be Giannis and Kuzma with Portis right there with them. And then I do like Randall as well. So those 4 are my favorite, and Jeff Green is my favorite spend down.
All right, so I think I'm going to probably end up figuring out how to do this at center. So first of all, I do prefer Alex Len to James Wiseman if you're going to put, if you're going to go really, really all the way down at center.
Yeah.
I think. Cody Zeller's cheap enough at 4,300. So those you could do that. I mean, that's certainly one way you could play.
Well, I think that at that point that you have to play Zeller. I don't know how you play Len over Zeller for $600.
No,
I don't see it.
Okay.
But I mean, look, there is upside for Len. So I guess from that point of view, it makes some sense. But it's not like Cody Zeller is going to be owned by 1,000,000% or anything here.
Okay. All right, that's definitely worth thinking about. And then if you don't want to go all the way up to Jokic, which certainly not going to talk you off if you can make the rest of your build work. I think that in light of what I've said about some of these other plays, guys, if that's the way I decide to go, you know what I mean? Like,
can you repeat that when it started? Hiccup for a second. Sorry, Sheets.
Oh, so if you're not going to do any of that, I mean, based on given what I've said about the rest of some of these plays, I'll probably find a way to make a bad projected Valanciunas work. center alongside of some of this Phoenix stuff that I like. As a matter of fact, I mean, if you make Valanciunas work, I mean, I probably wouldn't play Paul and Booker together. So I'll probably, if I play Valanciunas, for example, and then I could go down from Paul or go down from Booker or something like that. But again, the best play is Jokic, big surprise. And then, you know, I guess a lot of people are going to try to pay down, like to play Zeller or Len or whatever. Maybe this stuff in the middle gets ignored. I don't know.
Yeah. This is not my favorite. This is the position I think is the weakest position. So my theory with that thing is I'm going to try to prioritize Jokic, see if I can get him in with some of that other value we talked about. I do like Valanciunas as a pivot, and I like Zeller as a spend down. Montrezl Harrell's my middle range guy that I would probably lean towards. I think that because if you're playing a lot of lineups, I think you have to play DeAndre Ayton in some of them. The price is just getting to the point where like he could actually like 10x his salary. Now I know that's not the way things have been working out for them, and Sarge has been playing well, and things are he's fallen out of favor. But when you take no ownership into in an account, which is basically what it's been lately for him, and he's 6.3, it's not like he has to do that much to get you home and get 40, and that might be good enough. But he also has monster upside, even though he doesn't flash it that much. And this is actually a good matchup for him, both because he'd have to stay on the court more against Valanciunas, and because he can take Valanciunas outside. He's more mobile. So that's the only other one I thought of. I do think DeAndre Jordan's somewhat in play at 4,600 as well.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, I think we're good. I think we covered the first part. And are you going to be able to make it at 6 Eastern today?
Okay. So this is what I wanted to do, guys. Just so you guys know, I at the very least will make 6:30.
Okay.
But maybe 6:02 only because of time. Because what I want to do at 7, I'm going to do this for you guys at 7 from 7 to 7:30. I want to build a what I'm looking for. What's the name of the thing? The site with the freaking super draft. I'm going to build a super draft. I'm going to build some super drafts because that doesn't lock for an hour after I think 7 o'clock.
Oh, right. It's the 8 o'clock lock.
So I want to build that. And I want to kind of show you a process that I've been kind of working on to see if I could build a lineup using projections and using, little ownership fade along that. And I'm going to wait obviously till after the DFS slate locks at 7 to do that.
That makes sense.
So I'm going to either be there from 6 to 7:30, but I got to be able to talk Mrs. Sheets into letting me over 6 to 7:30, but maybe just 6:30 to 7:30. So if you need me to start this is what I was saying before.
Yeah, so that way you could build it through your thing. So I could always do Q&A until then. I could go live and just not show any screen for a little bit.
Right. Can you show like a non-DraftKings screen though? And
I can show FanDuel or something like that.
Yeah. All right. So in any case, we'll figure it out. We'll either go live at, we'll be live at 6 at somebody will be live at 6.
I'll be with you. Yeah.
And that's it.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Good luck to everybody out there. Thanks, Sheets. And guys, we'll see you at the top of the leaderboards, and we'll see you at 6 Eastern.
I'll let you know about it.